Look at the mess you have made. Are you blind? Madam, it was an accident. I'm sorry.
Greetings, friends. She was slapped, humiliated, and thrown out into the rain for breaking a single plate. But less than 24 hours later, she came back to the same house, not as a maid, but as the wife of a powerful CEO. Watch until the end because at the end we reveal the secret. But before that, please write in the comments where you are from. Hopefully those who have liked and subscribed to this channel will always be given health and have their fortunes smooth, their debts paid off. Amen. That night in Lagos did not begin like a miracle. It began with fear, shame, and a sound that would change everything. The sound of a plate shattering against the cold marble floor. Amara stood frozen, her hands trembling, her breath caught in her chest as every eye in the room turned toward her. In that moment, she was not a person. She was a mistake. The slap came fast. Sharp. Final. Her word ended in front of people who laughed at her pain. And just like that, she lost everything. No home. No money. No place to go. Only the dark road ahead, and the rain that refused to stop. She walked with nothing but a small bag and a broken heart, not knowing that the next step she would take would lead her straight into a destiny no one could have imagined. The sound of breaking porcelain cut through the house like a gunshot. It was sharp. Loud. Final. Every head in the dining room turned at once. Amara stood frozen, her hands still trembling in the air, her breath caught halfway in her chest. The shattered pieces of an expensive white plate lay scattered across the polished marble floor, glinting under the bright chandelier light. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the air felt heavy, like it was waiting for something worse to happen. Then Madame Beatrice slowly stood up from her chair. Her heels clicked against the floor as she walked closer, each step calm, controlled, and terrifying. The guests at the table watched in silence, their eyes moving between the broken plate and the young maid who looked like she might collapse at any second. Amara lowered her gaze. Her fingers tightened against her apron. She could already feel it coming. Madame Beatrice stopped right in front of her. She did not shout. Not yet. That made it worse. Her voice came out low and cold. Do you even know what you have done? Amara tried to speak, but her throat felt dry. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. She swallowed and forced the words out. I am sorry, Ma. It slipped. A sudden, sharp slap echoed through the room. Amara's head snapped to the side. The sting spread across her cheek instantly, hot and burning. She did not cry. She had learned not to cry in this house. But her eyes filled anyway, her vision blurring as she struggled to stay steady on her feet. Madame Beatrice's voice rose now, no longer calm. It slipped. That is what you say. It slipped. She turned to the guest, raising her hand slightly in disbelief. This girl just broke a plate worth more than everything she owns, and all she can say is that it slipped. Soft laughter came from one end of the table. Someone whispered something under their breath. Amara heard it. She heard all of it. Useless village girl. She kept her head down. Madame Beatrice stepped closer again, her voice now filled with anger and disgust. How many times have I told you to be careful? How many times? Or is your head too empty to remember anything? I am sorry, Ma, Amara said again, her voice shaking despite her effort to control it. Sorry will not fix it. Madame Beatrice looked down at the broken pieces, then back at Amara with a sharp glare. Pick it up. Amara quickly knelt on the floor. Her hands moved fast, gathering the sharp pieces one by one. The edges cut into her skin, but she did not stop. She did not react. She could feel the tiny sting as the glass bit into her fingers, but pain like this was nothing new. Behind her, she heard Vanessa's voice. Maybe she should pay for it, Mother. Amara's hands paused for just a second. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing on her lips as she watched. Yes. That is fair. If she breaks something, she should pay for it. The guests murmured in agreement, some nodding as if it made perfect sense. Madame Beatrice crossed her arms. Pay for it. With what? Look at her. Amara felt the weight of their eyes again. She kept picking up the pieces, her movement slower now. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. Then she should be punished. Otherwise she would never learn. There was something in her tone. Something sharp. Something personal. Amara knew that tone. It was the same tone Vanessa always used when she wanted to hurt her. Madame Beatrice nodded slowly. You are right. She turned back to Amara. Stand up. Amara obeyed immediately, rising to her feet with her hands still slightly shaking. Get out. Amara blinked. More. I said get out. The room went quiet again. Amara's heart began to pound. She did not understand. Not fully. Not yet. More, please, I will be more careful next time. I promise. There will be no next time. The words landed like a heavy weight. You are done here. Amara felt something drop inside her chest. It was not just fear. It was something deeper. Madame Beatrice pointed toward the door. Leave this house. Now. Amara stood still for a moment, her mind struggling to catch up with what was happening. Please, Ma, Amara said softly. Please. I need this job. Madame Beatrice's face hardened. And I need competent people in my house. Not careless liabilities. Vanessa watched with quiet satisfaction. You should be grateful we are letting you leave without calling the police, she added. That was enough. Amara lowered her head again. Yes, Ma. She turned slowly and walked toward the door. Each step felt heavy. Her chest tightened, her breathing uneven. She did not look back. She knew if she did, she might break. As she stepped outside, the door closed behind her with a soft but final sound. And just like that, it was over. The evening air felt colder than it should have been. The sky above Lagos was already dark, the streetlights casting long shadows along the quiet road. Amara stood still for a moment, holding onto the small bag she kept her few belongings in. Everything she owned was inside it. Her clothes. A small photograph of her mother. And a thin piece of cloth she used as a blanket. That was all. She took a deep breath, but it did nothing to steady her. She had nowhere to go. No money. No plan. She began to walk. The road stretched ahead of her, long and uncertain. Cars passed by occasionally, their headlights flashing across her face for a second before disappearing again. No one stopped. No one noticed. Her legs felt weak, but she kept moving. She thought about her village. About her mother. About why she had come to the city in the first place. It had seemed like a chance. A way to help her family. A way to build something better. But now she had nothing again. Her stomach tightened with hunger. She had not eaten since morning. There had been too much work, too many tasks. And now, there would be nothing at all. A drop of rain hit her arm. Then another. Within minutes, the rain began to fall harder. Amara did not run. She did not try to find shelter. She just kept walking, her clothes quickly soaking through, her hair clinging to her face. The water mixed with the tears she refused to let fall. Her steps slowed. The road blurred slightly in front of her. She felt tired. More tired than she had ever felt before. Her vision dimmed for a moment. And then, suddenly, a bright light flashed toward her. A car. Fast. Too fast. Amara froze. The sound of brakes screeching filled the air as the car stopped just inches away from her. Silence followed. Rain poured around them. The car door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Well-dressed. Calm. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Amara stood there, drenched, shaking, her heart racing. The man took a step closer. Are you trying to die? His voice was steady, deep, controlled. Amara could not answer immediately. Her lips trembled slightly. No, sir. The man studied her for a moment, his eyes taking in her condition, the soaked clothes, the small bag in her hand, the fear she could not hide. Then he spoke again. Get in the car. Amara hesitated. The rain continued to fall. Her word had just ended. And yet, standing in front of her now was something she did not understand. Something unexpected. Something that would change everything. She slowly moved. And stepped into the car. The car door closed with a soft, heavy sound that shut out the rain, the cold, and the darkness outside. For the first time that night, Amara felt still. Not safe. Not yet. But still. The inside of the car was quiet, warm, and clean. The faint scent of leather and something expensive filled the air. The world outside blurred as rain hit the windows in fast, uneven patterns. Amara sat carefully at the edge of the seat, her small bag clutched tightly in her lap, her wet clothes sticking uncomfortably to her skin. She did not move. She did not speak. She did not even look directly at the man. The driver's seat door opened, and the man stepped in. The engine came alive again, low and controlled. He adjusted the mirror slightly, and for a brief second, their eyes met through it. Amara quickly looked down. The car began to move. No music. No unnecessary noise. Just the steady sound of rain and the quiet hum of the engine. The man spoke after a few seconds. "Where are you going?" Amara hesitated. The question felt simple, but the answer was not. I do not know." Her voice was soft, almost lost under the sound of the rain. The man did not respond immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, his expression unchanged. "You do not know?" It was not disbelief. It was not judgment. It was just a statement. Amara shook her head slightly, even though he could not see her clearly. "No, sir." The silence returned, heavier this time. The car moved through the streets of Lagos, passing bright shops, quiet corners, people running for shelter under the rain. Amara watched the reflections of the city lights on the wet road through the window. Everything looked distant, like she was no longer part of it. After a moment, the man spoke again. "What happened?" Amara swallowed. Her fingers tightened around her bag. "I was working in a house." She paused. "I made a mistake." The man waited. "They sent me away." Still, his expression did not change. "Just like that?" Amara nodded slightly. "Yes, sir." The man leaned back just a little, his grip on the steering wheel steady. "What is your name?" "Amara." Her answer came quickly this time. "Amara what?" "Amara Okeke." The man gave a small nod, almost to himself. He did not say his name. They drove in silence again, but this silence felt different. Not as sharp. Not as cold. After a few minutes, the car slowed down. Amara looked up slightly. They had stopped in front of a small but clean building. A hospital. The man turned off the engine. "Get down." Amara blinked in surprise. "Sir. You are injured?" She looked at her hands. The small cut from the broken plate had started to sting more now that she was no longer moving. Thin lines of blood had dried across her fingers. "It is nothing, sir." The man opened his door. "Get down." His tone was calm, but it was not a suggestion. Amara quickly opened her door and stepped out. The rain had softened now, but the ground was still wet. She followed him without question. Inside, the hospital was quiet. Bright lights. Clean floors. A nurse at the front desk looked up as they entered. The man spoke briefly with her, his voice low and controlled. Amara could not hear everything, but she noticed how the nurse's expression changed almost immediately. Respect. Urgency. They led her to a small room. "Sit." Amara obeyed. A nurse came in with gloves and supplies. She took Amara's hands gently, cleaning the cuts, applying something that stung sharply. Amara did not pull away. She was used to pain. The nurse finished quickly and wrapped her fingers carefully. "You will be fine." Amara nodded. "Thank you." When she stepped out of the room, the man was waiting just outside, leaning slightly against the wall, his arms crossed. He looked as composed as before, untouched by the night, by the rain, by everything. He pushed himself off the wall as she approached. "Come." They walked out together. Back to the car. This time, when Amara sat down, she felt something shift slightly inside her. Not comfort. But something close to relief. The car moved again. After a few minutes, the man spoke. "Do you have family?" Amara nodded. "Yes, sir." "In Lagos?" "No, sir." "Where?" "In the village." He did not ask which village. He did not ask more questions. Instead, he reached forward slightly and adjusted the temperature inside the car, making it warmer. Amara noticed. She did not say anything. The city lights began to change. The busy streets faded into quieter roads. Larger buildings appeared. Gates. Guards. expensive homes. Amora's eyes moved slightly as she looked around, trying not to be obvious. The car slowed again. This time, it stopped in front of a large gate. A security guard stepped forward immediately. He looked at the car, then quickly signaled for the gate to open. No questions. No delay. The car drove inside. Amora's heart began to beat faster again. The house ahead was large. Not just big. It was the kind of place she had only seen from far away, the kind of place she had once walked in, but never belonged to. The car stopped. The engine went silent. The man stepped out. Amara followed. The ground was dry here. The rain had not reached inside the compound. She stood still for a second, unsure. Come. She moved again. Inside, the house was quiet. The lights were soft, the space wide and clean. Everything looked expensive, but not loud. Not like Madame Beatrice's house. This place felt controlled. The man walked ahead, then stopped. He turned to face her fully for the first time. Amara finally looked at him properly. He was young. Not too young, but not old. His face was calm, sharp, and serious. His eyes held something she could not read easily. This was not a man who spoke too much. This was a man people listened to. You can stay here tonight. Amara blinked. Sir. You can stay here tonight. He repeated it like it was nothing. Like it did not change her entire situation. Amara's chest tightened. I do not want to cause trouble. You are not. She hesitated. Her mind was racing. Nothing about this made sense. Why would he help her? Why would he bring her here? Why would he trust her? The man spoke again. There is a guest room. He gestured slightly. Someone will show you. As if on cue, a woman appeared from another part of the house. Order. Come. She looked at Amara, then at the man, waiting. Take her. The woman nodded. This way. Amara looked back at the man one more time. Thank you, sir. He gave a small nod. That was all. Amara followed the woman upstairs. The room she was shown into was bigger than anything she had ever slept in. A large bed. Clean sheets. Soft lighting. A bathroom inside. Amara stood near the door for a moment. She did not move. The woman looked at her. You can wash up. Amara nodded. Yes, ma. The woman left. The door closed. Silence. Amara slowly walked further into the room. Her fingers brushed the edge of the bed. Soft. Clean. She placed her small bag down carefully. Then she sat. Her body finally relaxed, just a little. Everything had changed in one night. From the street. To this. From nothing. To something she did not understand yet. Amara leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on her knees. Her mind was full. Her heart still heavy. But somewhere, deep inside, something had started. And it was only the beginning. Amara did not sleep immediately that night, even though her body was tired and her eyes felt heavy from everything that had happened. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, her hands resting on her lap, her mind moving through every moment again and again as if it was trying to understand how her life had changed so quickly in just a few hours. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, and the softness of the bed behind her felt unfamiliar, like something she was not sure she was allowed to touch. She had spent months sleeping on thin mats, sometimes on the floor, sometimes in small corners of spaces that were never truly hers, and now she was sitting in a room that looked like it belonged to someone important, someone who had never known what it meant to struggle for a place to rest. She slowly stood up and walked toward the bathroom, her steps careful as if she was afraid something might break under her feet even though everything around her looked strong and perfect. When she turned on the water, she hesitated for a moment, watching it run clear and steady before finally stepping under it. The warmth hit her skin and she closed her eyes, letting out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. The dirt, the rain, the cold, and the tension of the night slowly washed away, but the weight in her chest did not leave as easily. She stayed there longer than she planned, not because she wanted to waste time, but because for the first time in a long while, she did not feel like she had to rush. When she came out, wrapped in a clean towel that had been neatly placed for her, she noticed a set of clothes folded on the bed. They were simple but new, far better than anything she owned. She paused, looking at them for a moment, wondering who had placed them there and why. No one had said anything about clothes. No one had asked her size. Yet somehow, they seemed to fit her perfectly when she put them on. The fabric felt soft against her skin, and for a brief second, she saw herself in the mirror and did not immediately recognize the person staring back at her. The girl in the mirror did not look like the same girl who had been slapped and thrown out into the rain just hours ago. Her face was still tired, her eyes still carrying the weight of everything she had been through, but there was something else there now. Something quieter. Something waiting. Amara stepped back slightly from the mirror and looked around the room again. Everything was in place, everything was clean, everything felt controlled in a way she had never experienced before. It made her uneasy in a different way than chaos did. In chaos, you expect things to go wrong. In a place like this, you do not know what is expected of you, and that uncertainty sits deeper. She moved back to the bed and sat down, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion she had been holding back. She lay down slowly, almost carefully, as if she was afraid she might disturb something invisible. The softness of the mattress surprised her again, and before she could think too much about it, her eyes began to close. The last thing she remembered was the sound of silence, steady and calm, wrapping around her like something she did not fully trust yet. Morning came gently. Light slipped through the curtains, soft and warm, touching the edges of the room without forcing its way in. Amara opened her eyes slowly, her body taking a few seconds to remember where she was. For a brief moment, she thought it had all been a dream. The house, the man, the room, everything felt too far from her normal life to be real. But when she sat up and looked around, the reality returned just as quickly. She was still here. She got out of bed, smoothing the sheets slightly out of habit even though no one had asked her to do it. Old habits did not leave easily. She walked to the door and paused before opening it, her hand resting on the handle as she took a small breath. She did not know what was waiting outside, and that uncertainty made her hesitate more than she expected. When she finally stepped out, the hallway was quiet. The house felt even larger in the daylight, the space stretching further than she had noticed the night before. She walked slowly, her steps soft against the floor, her eyes moving from one detail to another as she tried to understand the place she had found herself in. As she reached the stairs, she heard voices. Low. Calm. Controlled. She stopped for a moment, listening without meaning to. The voices were coming from downstairs, one of them clearly belonging to the man who had brought her here. The other voice was unfamiliar, older, and respectful in tone. She could not hear the exact words, but she could feel the structure of the conversation. This was not casual talk. This was business. This was authority. Amara moved down the stairs carefully, not wanting to interrupt but also not wanting to appear as if she was hiding. As she reached the bottom, the voices became clearer. Everything is prepared, sir. The meeting is at 10. Good. The man's voice was the same as the night before, calm and steady, carrying a quiet authority that did not need to be raised to be felt. Amara stepped into view, and both men turned slightly. The older man, dressed neatly in a suit, looked at her briefly, then back at the man. I will take my leave. The man nodded, and the older man walked past Amara with a small, polite glance before leaving the house. Now it was just the two of them. Amara stood still for a moment, unsure of what to do or say. The man looked at her, his expression unchanged from the night before, but his eyes studied her more clearly now in the light. You slept. It was not a question. Yes, sir, she replied softly. He nodded slightly, then gestured toward the dining area. Eat. Amara hesitated again, the same uncertainty returning. She walked toward the table and saw that food had already been prepared. Simple, clean, more than enough. She sat carefully, her back straight, her movements controlled. The man sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Amara picked up the spoon slowly, her hand still slightly unsure, and began to eat. The food was warm, filling, and for the first time since the previous day, she felt the tightness in her stomach. The man watched her for a moment, then spoke. You work as a maid? Amara nodded. Yes, sir. For how long? Almost a year. He leaned back slightly, his eyes still on her. And before that? Amara paused, her spoon resting against the plate. I was in the village. With my mother. He nodded once, as if that was enough information for now. Silence returned again, but it did not feel as uncomfortable as before. After a few moments, he spoke again. You can stay here for now. Amara looked up quickly, surprised. Sir. You heard me. She swallowed, her thoughts moving quickly. I do not want to be a burden. You are not. His tone remained steady, leaving no space for argument. Amara lowered her gaze again. Thank you, sir. He did not respond to that. Instead, he stood up, adjusting his sleeve slightly. Someone will speak with you. Amara watched as he turned and walked away, his steps calm and purposeful, as if everything in his life moved according to a plan she could not yet see. She sat there for a moment longer, the words settling slowly inside her. You can stay here. It sounded simple. But nothing about this felt simple. And deep inside, Amara knew. This house. This man. This sudden change. It was not just help. Amara remained seated at the dining table long after the man had walked away, her hands resting lightly beside the empty plate as her mind tried to keep up with everything that had been said. The words were simple, clear, and direct, yet they carried a weight she could not ignore. You can stay here for now. It sounded like a small decision, something temporary, something easy, but nothing in her life had ever come without a condition, without a cost, without something waiting behind it. That was what made her uneasy. Not the comfort, not the kindness, but the silence around it. No explanation, no expectation spoken out loud, no rules given yet, and that was what made her feel like she was standing at the edge of something she could not see. She slowly stood up from the table, her movements careful, almost automatic, and began to gather the plates as she would have done in any other house. It was instinct, something her body did without needing permission, but before she could take more than a few steps, a voice stopped her. You do not have to do that. Amara turned quickly. The older woman from the night before stood a few steps away, her posture straight, her expression calm but firm. She was not dressed like a maid, and not like a guest either. There was something in her presence that made it clear she belonged here, that she understood this house in a way Amara did not. Amara lowered her hand slightly. I can help, she said softly. The woman shook her head. That is not your duty here. Amara paused, unsure of how to respond. The words felt unfamiliar. Not your duty. In every place she had worked, everything had been her duty. Cleaning, cooking, carrying, fixing, enduring. If something needed to be done, it became her responsibility whether it was said or not. Now, for the first time, she was being told not to do something, and it left her feeling more uncertain than before. The woman stepped closer, her eyes studying Amara carefully, not with judgment, but with quiet observation. My name is Mrs. Odeola, she said in a steady voice. I manage this house. Amara nodded slightly. Yes, ma. Mrs. Odeola gestured gently toward the hallway. Come with me. Amara followed without hesitation, her steps light as she walked beside the older woman. The house seemed even larger as they moved through it, each room opening into another space that felt carefully arranged and untouched by chaos. Everything had a place, and everything stayed in that place. It was a kind of order Amara had never lived in, and she felt like she had to learn how to move inside it without disturbing anything. Mrs. Odeola led her into a sitting room, quieter than the others, with soft chairs and a large window that let in the morning light. She gestured for Amara to sit. Amara hesitated for a brief moment before lowering herself into the chair, her posture straight, her hands resting together in her lap. You are not a maid here, Mrs. Odeola said calmly. Amara looked up, surprised. Then what am I? The question came out before she could stop it. Mrs. Odeola did not answer immediately. She watched Amara for a moment, as if measuring her words before speaking. For now, you are a guest. Amara felt the words settle inside her slowly. A guest. It sounded simple, but it did not feel real. She had never been a guest anywhere. She had always been the one serving, the one standing behind, the one no one noticed until something went wrong. Mrs. Odeola continued. That means you do not clean, you do not cook, and you do not take instructions from anyone except him. Amara understood who she meant without the name being said. She nodded slowly. Yes, ma. Mrs. Odeola leaned slightly forward. But being a guest here is not the same as being a guest anywhere else. This house has rules, even if they are not spoken loudly. Amara listened carefully. You will learn them by watching, by listening, and by understanding how things are done here. Do not move carelessly. Do not speak unnecessarily. And do not assume anything. Amara lowered her gaze. Yes, ma. Mrs. Adeola's tone softened just a little. You are here because he allowed it. That is enough for now. The words were clear. Amara nodded again. Mrs. Adeola stood up. There are things you will need. She walked toward the door, and Amara followed once again. They moved upstairs, but this time to a different section of the house, one Amara had not seen before. The rooms here felt more personal, more lived in, but still controlled. Mrs. Adeola opened the door and stepped aside. Inside was a wardrobe filled with clothes. Neatly arranged. Different sizes. Different styles. Amara stopped at the entrance, her eyes widening slightly. These are for you, Mrs. Adeola said. Amara shook her head immediately. Ma, I cannot. You can, Mrs. Adeola interrupted gently. They have been prepared. Amara looked at the clothes again, her mind struggling to accept it. Nothing in her life had ever been prepared for her. Everything had always been something she had to fight for, to earn, to endure. Now, things were being given to her without explanation, and it made her feel like she was standing in a place she did not belong. Mrs. Adeola watched her reaction carefully. You will need to look presentable, she added. Amara swallowed and nodded. Yes, ma. She stepped inside slowly, her fingers brushing lightly against one of the dresses. The fabric was smooth, soft, and far from anything she had ever worn. She could not imagine herself in it, and yet it was meant for her. Mrs. Adeola spoke again from the doorway. You will also have someone to assist you. Amara turned slightly. Assist me. A young woman appeared beside Mrs. Adeola, her posture relaxed but respectful. This is Kemi. Kemi smiled slightly. Good morning. Amara nodded. Good morning. She felt out of place again, but this time in a different way. Not because she was being looked down on, but because she was being placed somewhere higher than she understood. Kemi stepped forward. I will help you with anything you need. Amara did not know how to respond to that. She had never been in a position where someone offered to help her without expecting something in return. Thank you, she said softly. Mrs. Adeola gave a small nod. Good. She turned to leave, but paused for a moment. He will call for you when he is ready. Amara felt her chest tighten slightly at those words. Yes, ma. Mrs. Adeola left, and Kemi remained. The room felt quiet again. Amara looked around, then back at Kemi. I do not understand what is happening, she admitted, her voice low but honest. Kemi's smile softened. You do not need to understand everything at once. Amara looked down at her hands. That did not make it easier. She had entered a house that did not treat her like a servant, but also did not explain why she was there. She had been given clothes, a room, and a place to stay, but no clear reason. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet thought began to grow. This was not just kindness. This was preparation. For something she had not seen yet. And whatever it was coming closer. Amara spent the next few hours inside the room, moving slowly between the wardrobe, the mirror, and the quiet space around her as if she was trying to understand how she fit into it. Kemi stayed close, not too near, not too far, watching her with a compassion that made Amara feel both supported and observed at the same time. Every movement felt new. Every choice felt important, even something as simple as picking what to wear. Amara had never had options before. Clothes were not something she chose. They were something she accepted. Something given, used, and worn until they could no longer hold together. Now she stood in front of a wardrobe filled with possibilities, and instead of feeling excited, she felt unsure. Kemi stepped forward gently and reached for a dress, holding it up for Amara to see. It was simple but elegant, soft in color, not too bright, not too plain. It looked like something someone confident would wear without needing attention. This will suit you, Kemi said quietly. Amara looked at it, then at herself in the mirror. It is too much. Kemi shook her head. It is not. Amara hesitated, then slowly took the dress and stepped behind the divider to change. As she removed the clothes she had been given earlier, she paused for a moment, holding them in her hands. Even those simple clothes already felt like a step away from who she used to be. When she put on the dress Kemi had chosen, the change felt deeper. Not just on her body, but somewhere inside her as well. She stepped out. Kemi smiled slightly. You see. Amara looked at her reflection again. The dress fit perfectly. It rested naturally on her shoulders, falling neatly along her body without effort. Her posture changed without her noticing. She stood straighter. Her movement slowed. But her eyes still held the same question. Kemi adjusted a small detail near her shoulder, then stepped back. He will not like hesitation. Amara looked at her. Kemi nodded. Mr. Ethan. It was the first time Amara heard his name. She repeated it quietly in her mind. Ethan. A name that carried weight, even before she understood why. Before she could ask anything else, there was a knock on the door. Kemi turned. Come in. A man stood at the entrance, one of the staff. He spoke calmly. Mr. Ethan is ready. Amara felt her chest tighten slightly again. Now. The man nodded. Yes. Kemi turned to Amara. It is time. Amara took a small breath, her fingers pressing lightly together as if to steady herself. She followed. The walk downstairs felt different this time. Not like she was entering a place she did not belong, but like she was being brought somewhere she was expected. The air felt heavier, the silence more intentional. When they reached the main sitting room, Kemi stopped. You go alone from here? Amara nodded. Yes. She stepped forward. Ethan was standing near the window, looking out at the open compound beyond the glass. His posture was relaxed, but there was something in the way he stood that made the space around him feel controlled. He did not turn immediately when she entered. It was as if he already knew she was there. Amara stopped a few steps away. Sir. Ethan turned slowly. His eyes moved over her, not quickly, not carelessly, but with a kind of quiet attention that made her feel seen in a way she was not used to. He noticed everything. The dress, the way she stood, the way her hands were placed, the slight tension in her shoulders. Good, he said. That was all. But the word carried approval. Amara lowered her gaze slightly. Thank you, sir. Ethan walked past her and gestured toward a chair. Sit. She obeyed. He remained standing for a moment, then sat across from her. There was no rush in his movements. Everything he did felt deliberate. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he spoke. Do you trust easily? The question came without warning. Amara looked up, caught off guard. Sir. Do you trust people easily? She hesitated. No. Ethan nodded slightly. That is good. Amara did not understand. He leaned forward just a little, his hands resting calmly together. What I am about to say will not make sense to you immediately. Amara listened carefully, her focus sharp now. But you will need to listen without interrupting. She nodded. Yes, sir. Ethan continued. There are situations where decisions must be made quickly. Without explanation. Without time for doubt. Amara's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. I am in such a situation now. He paused for a brief moment, then looked directly at her. And you are part of it. Amara felt the words settle heavily inside her. Me. Ethan did not look away. Yes. Her mind began to move quickly, trying to understand. I do not understand, sir. You do not need to understand everything today. His voice remained calm. But you need to understand one thing. He leaned back slightly. You are not here by accident. Amara's breath slowed. Then why am I here? Ethan held her gaze. Because you are useful to me. The honesty in his words was clear. There was no attempt to soften it. Amara felt a small shift inside her. Not fear. Not yet. But awareness. Useful. In every place she had worked, she had been useful. But this felt different. This was not about cleaning or serving. This was something else. Ethan continued. I need to get married. The words landed simply, but their meaning did not. Amara blinked. Married. He nodded. Yes. Her thoughts stumbled over each other. Sir, You will marry me? The room went silent. Amara felt her heartbeat rise suddenly, her chest tightening as if the air had changed. She looked at him, searching his face for something that would make sense of what he had just said. But his expression remained steady. This was not a joke. This was not confusion. This was a decision. Sir. I do not understand. You are not required to understand everything now. His tone did not change. But you are required to listen. Amara swallowed. Her voice came out softer. Why me? Ethan watched her for a moment. Because you have nothing. The words were direct. Because you have no ties in this city. Because you can leave your past behind without anyone questioning it. Because no one is looking for you. Amara felt each reason settle deeper than the last. It was not cruel. But it was not kind either. It was truth. Ethan continued. And because you will follow instructions. Amara lowered her gaze slightly. Her mind moved between fear, confusion, and something else she could not yet name. What kind of marriage? Ethan answered immediately. A contract. The word felt cold. A marriage in name only. For a limited time. You will live here. You will be treated as my wife. You will follow certain expectations. And when it is over, you will leave with compensation. Amara's hands tightened again. Compensation. A life. A way out of everything she had been through. But at what cost? She looked up again. And if I refuse? Ethan did not hesitate. Then you leave today. The choice was clear. No pressure in his voice. No threat. Just reality. Amara felt the weight of it pressing down on her. Outside, the world she had just been thrown out into was still there. Cold. Unforgiving. Uncertain. Inside this house, something else was being offered. Not kindness. Not love. But opportunity. She took a slow breath. Her voice came out steady, even though everything inside her was not. What do I have to do? Ethan's eyes held hers. For now. Trust me. Amara did not answer immediately. But she did not look away. And in that silence, something shifted. A decision was beginning to form. One that would change everything. Amara did not speak immediately after Ethan finished talking, but the silence between them was no longer empty. It was filled with weight, with consequence, with something that could not be taken back once it was accepted. Her fingers pressed lightly together in her lap as she tried to steady the movement inside her chest. Everything about the situation felt unreal, but at the same time, it was clearer than anything she had faced before. There were no hidden insults, no false kindness, no confusing emotions disguised as generosity. Ethan had said exactly what he meant, and that honesty, even though it was cold, gave her something she could hold on to. She slowly lifted her eyes to meet his again, searching for something that might change her mind, something that would make this easier to refuse. But his expression remained the same, calm and firm, as if he had already accepted whatever decision she was about to make. Amara took a breath, then spoke. If I agree, what happens next? Ethan leaned back slightly, as if he had expected that question. Then we begin immediately. There was no pause in his response. You will be prepared. You will be introduced as my wife. And everything that needs to be done will be handled. Amara listened carefully, her thoughts moving faster now, trying to understand the shape of what she was stepping into. And after, you leave with everything we agreed on. He said it like it was simple. Like it was a transaction. Amara felt something tighten in her chest again, but she did not let it show. She had learned long ago that showing too much only gave others something to use against her. She lowered her gaze for a moment, thinking. Outside this house, she had nothing. Inside this house, she had something she did not understand. But it was something. She raised her head again. I will do it. The words came out steady. Ethan did not react immediately. He simply watched her for a second, as if confirming that she understood what she had just said. Good. He stood up. Then we do not waste time. Amara felt the decision settle inside her. It was done. There was no going back now. Ethan walked toward the door, then stopped. Mrs. Odeola will handle the details. Amara nodded. Yes, sir. He paused slightly. And Amara. She looked up. Do not hesitate again. His voice was not harsh, but it carried a clear message. She nodded once. Yes. He left the room. Amara remained seated for a few seconds, her body still, her mind slowly catching up to what had just happened. She had agreed to marry a man she did not know, for reasons she did not fully understand, in a situation that offered her a future she had never imagined but could not yet see clearly. It felt like stepping onto a road without knowing where it led. But she had stepped. The door opened again, and Mrs. Odeola entered, her expression calm as always, as if nothing unexpected had happened. "It is settled." Amara stood up slowly. "Yes, ma." Mrs. Odeola nodded. "Good." She walked closer. "Then we begin." Amara felt a shift in the room. The quiet uncertainty from before was gone. In its place was movement. Purpose. "There is much to do," Mrs. Odeola continued. Amara listened carefully. "You will not speak about your past unless instructed. You will not contradict him in public. You will not act out of place." Amara nodded with each word. "Yes, ma." Mrs. Odeola's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. "You are no longer the girl who walked into this house last night." Amara felt the truth of that. "From this moment, everything about you must change." Amara straightened slightly. "Yes, ma." Mrs. Odeola gestured toward the door. "Come." They walked out together, this time with a different energy. Not slow, not uncertain, but direct. They moved through the house with purpose, and for the first time, Amara felt like she was being guided into something, not just allowed to exist in it. They entered a larger room, one Amara had not seen before. It was filled with mirrors, tables, and items neatly arranged across the space. Clothes, shoes, accessories, everything placed with care. Several people were already inside, waiting. They turned as Amara entered. "This is her," Mrs. Odeola said. The room shifted instantly. One woman stepped forward, her eyes scanning Amara from head to toe. "We will begin with her appearance." Another moved closer. "Her posture needs adjustment." Amara stood still as they began to move around her, adjusting, observing, speaking in low tones that were not meant to include her. Hands moved gently but efficiently, turning her slightly, lifting her chin, straightening her shoulders. "Relax," one of them said. Amara tried. But everything felt too fast. She was no longer just being helped. She was being prepared. Hours passed, though it did not feel like time moved normally inside that room. Every detail was addressed. Her hair was styled, her skin cared for, her nails cleaned and shaped, her posture corrected again and again until it became natural. She was taught how to walk. Slow. Steady. Controlled. Not too fast. Not too hesitant. She was taught how to sit, how to look, how to respond without speaking too much. Each instruction was clear. Each correction immediate. At first, Amara struggled. Her body moved the way it was used to moving, quick, careful, always ready to step aside. But gradually, something began to change. Her movement slowed. Her shoulders settled. Her gaze lifted. By the time they stepped back, the girl standing in front of the mirror looked different. Not just in appearance, but in presence. Amara looked at herself, her eyes searching for something familiar. She found it. But it was deeper now, quieter, stronger. Mrs. Odeola stepped beside her. "This is only the beginning." Amara nodded. "Yes, ma." Mrs. Odeola watched her reflection. "You must remember who you are now." Amara held her gaze in the mirror. "Who am I?" Mrs. Odeola answered without hesitation. "You are Mrs. Eaton Okofo." The name settled slowly. Mrs. Eaton Okofo. It did not feel real. But it was now hers. Amara took a breath, her posture steady. The girl who had been thrown out into the rain was still inside her. But the world would no longer see her that way. And soon. Neither would she. The transformation did not end in the preparation room. It only made the next step possible. By the time Amara stepped out into the main hall again, everything around her felt sharper, clearer, and at the same time, more dangerous. It was not the kind of danger that came with shouting or anger. It was the quiet kind, the kind that waited behind polite smiles and careful words. The kind that judged without speaking. The kind that remembered every mistake. Mrs. Odeola walked beside her, her pace steady, her posture straight, as if she had walked this path many times before. Amara followed, matching her steps carefully, her movements controlled just as she had been taught. She could feel the difference in herself, but she could also feel the pressure of holding that difference in place. Every step mattered now. Every glance mattered. There was no space for carelessness. They entered a white sitting room where 2 men and a woman were already waiting. They stood as soon as Ethan walked in from the opposite side of the room. Amara noticed how quickly the energy changed when he entered. Conversation stopped. Attention shifted. Respect filled the space without anyone needing to say it. Ethan did not look at them immediately. His eyes moved to Amara first. Come here. Amara walked forward, her steps measured, her shoulders steady, her chin slightly raised just as she had practiced. She stopped beside him. Ethan turned to the others. This is my wife. The words were simple, but they changed everything. Amara felt the room shift again, this time toward her. The attention that had been on Ethan now moved in her direction, sharp and curious. She could feel their eyes studying her, trying to understand who she was, where she came from, why they had never heard of her before. The woman stepped forward first, her smile polite but controlled. Congratulations. Amara nodded slightly. Thank you. Her voice was calm, steady, just enough. The woman's eyes lingered for a moment longer than necessary. We were not informed. Ethan's expression did not change. You are now? The conversation ended there. The 2 men nodded respectfully, their attention returning to Ethan as if that was where it belonged. Business resumed, but the atmosphere had changed. There was curiosity now, quiet and careful, but present. Amara stood beside Ethan, silent, observing. She listened to the way they spoke, the way they chose their words, the way they paused before responding. This was not the world she came from. Here, nothing was said without purpose. After a few minutes, Ethan stood. That will be all. The meeting ended quickly. The 3 visitors left, but not without one last glance at Amara. Not rude, not obvious, but enough to show that she had been noticed. When the door closed, the room returned to its calm state. Ethan looked at her. You did not hesitate. Amara nodded slightly. You said I should not. He held her gaze for a second, then gave a small nod. Good. There was no praise, but there was approval. Mrs. Odeola stepped forward. The car is ready. Ethan turned. We are leaving. Amara felt another shift inside her. Leaving. To where? But she did not ask. She followed. Outside, the air felt warmer than before. The compound was quiet, controlled, just like everything else. The same car from the night before was waiting, its surface clean and untouched. Ethan entered first. Amara followed, sitting beside him this time, not in the back as she had before. The difference did not go unnoticed by her. The car moved. The gates opened without delay. The city stretched out in front of them again, but it did not feel the same. Yesterday, Amara had walked through it unnoticed, invisible to everyone around her. Today, she sat inside a car that people moved aside for, a car that did not wait, a car that carried weight. She looked out the window, watching Lagos move past them. The same streets. The same people. But everything felt distant now, like she had stepped out of it. Ethan spoke after a few minutes. We are going to the company. Amara turned slightly. Yes. You will not speak unless necessary. Amara nodded. Yes. You will observe? Yes. And you will remember everything. Amara's fingers tightened slightly against her dress. Yes. The car continued forward, moving through areas that grew more structured, more formal. Tall buildings, glass walls, security gates, controlled entry points. This was a different part of the city. A place where decisions were made. Where power moved quietly. The car slowed as they approached a large building. Security stepped forward immediately. The gate opened. The car entered. Amara's eyes moved slowly, taking everything in without appearing to stare. People walked with purpose. No one moved without direction. Everything was fast, but controlled. The car stopped. A man hurried forward and opened the door. Good morning, sir. Ethan stepped out. Amara followed. The man's eyes flicked toward her for a brief second, then returned to Ethan. Everything is ready. Ethan nodded. They walked inside. The building was larger than anything Amara had ever entered. The floors shined, the air felt cool, the space wide and organized. People greeted Ethan as he passed, their voices respectful, their posture straight. Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Amara walked beside him, her step steady, her face calm. She could feel the attention again, quieter this time, more controlled, but still there. They entered an elevator. The doors closed. Silence. Amara looked straight ahead, her reflection faintly visible in the mirrored wall. You are being watched, Ethan said calmly. Amara did not move. I know. Do not react to it. I will not. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. They stepped out into another space, quieter, more private. Offices lined the hallway, each one closed, each one carrying a sense of importance. They entered a large office at the end. Ethan walked in as if it belonged to him. Because it did. Amara followed. This is where you will sit, he said, gesturing to a chair near his desk. Amara sat. Ethan moved to his desk and began working immediately, as if her presence did not change anything. But it did. Amara sat quietly, her hands resting together, her posture steady, her eyes observing everything around her. The room. The movement. The people who came in and out. The way they spoke. The way they avoided looking at her too directly. Time passed. She did not speak. She did not move unnecessarily. She remembered everything. At one point, the door opened again. A woman stepped in. Confident. Well-dressed. Sharp eyes. She stopped when she saw Amara. Her expression changed slightly. Ethan, she said. Ethan looked up briefly. What is it? The woman's eyes returned to Amara. Who is she? Ethan did not hesitate. My wife? The room went still. The woman's gaze sharpened. That is not possible. Ethan leaned back slightly. It is. The woman stepped closer. You did not inform anyone. I do not need to. The tension in the room grew. Amara remained still, her face calm, her posture unchanged. The woman studied her again, longer this time. Then she spoke, her voice lower. This will cause problems. Ethan's expression remained the same. I am aware. The woman did not respond immediately. Then she turned. We will discuss this later. She walked out. The door closed. Silence returned. Amara's heart was steady, but she could feel the shift. This world. This place. It was not just watching her. It was reacting to her. And whatever had just started was not going to be simple. The door had barely closed behind the woman when the silence inside the office changed. It was no longer calm. It carried tension, quiet but present, like something had been set in motion that could not be stopped. Amara remained seated, her posture unchanged, her face steady just as she had been trained, but inside, she could feel the shift clearly. The woman's reaction had not been small. It had not been polite curiosity. It had been resistance. Ethan did not speak immediately. He returned his attention to the document on his desk as if nothing had happened, as if the interruption meant nothing. But Amara had begun to understand something about him. When he appeared calm, it did not mean things were simple. It meant he had already calculated what came next. After a few minutes, he finally looked up. That was Adis. Amara listened carefully. She is not just staff. She represents interest. Amara nodded slightly, absorbing the meaning behind the words. This was not about personal dislike. This was about power, control, and decisions that affected more than one person. Will she be a problem? Amara asked quietly. Ethan did not answer immediately. He watched her for a moment instead. She already is. The honesty in his response made everything clearer. Amara lowered her gaze slightly, not in fear, but in thought. Ethan continued. From now on, you do not move without awareness. Every room you enter, every person you meet, you pay attention. Amara nodded. Yes. You are no longer invisible. The word settled deeply. For most of her life, Amara had been invisible. Ignored unless she made a mistake. Overlooked unless someone needed something from her. Now, suddenly, she had become visible in a world where visibility brought attention, and attention brought risk. Ethan leaned back slightly. And not everyone will welcome you. Amara lifted her eyes again. I understand. He watched her for a second longer, then returned to his work. Good. The conversation ended there, but the meaning remained. The rest of the morning passed in controlled silence. People came into the office one by one, each with a purpose, each carrying documents, reports, or questions that required Ethan's attention. Every time someone entered, Amara felt their eyes shift toward her, even if only for a second. Some hid their curiosity better than others. Some tried not to look at all. But all of them noticed. And she noticed them noticing. She did exactly what she had been told. She observed. She listened. She remembered. The way people spoke to Ethan changed slightly depending on who they were. Some were confident but careful. Others were respectful to the point of stiffness. No one wasted time. No one spoke without purpose. At one point, a younger man entered, carrying a stack of files. He stopped when he saw Amara, his expression showing clear surprise before he quickly adjusted himself. "Good afternoon, sir." Ethan nodded. "Leave it there." The man placed the files on the desk, but his attention lingered for a second too long. His eyes moved toward Amara again, trying to understand, trying to place her. Ethan noticed. "Do you have something to say?" The man straightened immediately. "No, sir." "Then leave." The man nodded quickly and left the room. Amara felt something shift again. Not just in the room, but in the way people reacted to her presence. This was not just curiosity anymore. It was caution. By midday, Ethan stood. "We are leaving." Amara stood immediately. "Yes." They walked out of the office together, the same quiet attention following them as they moved through the building. This time, it felt heavier. News had begun to spread. People did not speak openly, but their eyes said enough. They entered the elevator. Amara stood beside Ethan, her reflection once again visible in the mirrored wall. "You handled that well," Ethan said. Amara turned slightly. "I only did what you said." "That is why it was correct." The elevator doors opened. They stepped out and moved toward the car. Once inside, the doors closed and the outside noise faded again. The quiet inside the car returned, but it did not feel the same as before. There was more awareness now, more understanding. Amara looked out the window as the car moved, but her mind was not on the streets anymore. It was on the office. On the woman. On the way everything had shifted the moment Ethan introduced her as his wife. After a few minutes, she spoke. "This is not just about marriage." Ethan glanced at her briefly. "No." Amara continued. "It is about something else." Ethan did not answer immediately, but he did not deny it. After a moment, he spoke. "There are people who benefit from certain expectations." Amara listened. "And there are people who lose when those expectations change." Amara nodded slowly. "And I am the change." Ethan looked at her again, this time with a slight pause. "Yes." The word carried weight. Amara leaned back slightly, her thoughts settling into place. She was not just filling a role. She was disrupting something. The car turned into the compound and came to a stop. The gates closed behind them, shutting out the rest of the world once again. They stepped out and entered the house. Inside, everything was as calm as before, as if nothing had changed. But Amara knew better now. The calm did not mean safety. It meant control. Mrs. Odeola approached them. "Lunch is ready." Ethan nodded. "Good." They moved to the dining area. This time, Amara did not hesitate before sitting. She had begun to understand her place, even if she did not fully understand the reason behind it. They ate in quiet for a few minutes. Then Ethan spoke. "There will be an event tomorrow." Amara looked up slightly. "Yes." "You will attend with me?" Amara nodded. "Yes." He continued. "People will be watching more closely." Amara's fingers tightened slightly, but her face remained calm. "I understand." Ethan leaned back slightly. "You will not make mistakes." It was not a threat. It was a statement. Amara met his gaze. "I will not." He held her eyes for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Good." The rest of the meal passed without more words, but Amara's mind was already moving ahead. An event. More people. More attention. More eyes watching her, waiting for something to go wrong. But something inside her had begun to change. She was no longer reacting. She was preparing. Later that evening, as she stood alone in her room, looking at her reflection again, she saw the difference more clearly than before. The uncertainty was still there, but it no longer controlled her. It had been replaced by something steadier. Awareness. She adjusted her posture slightly, remembering the instructions, the corrections, the expectations. Tomorrow would not be simple. Nothing in this world was. But she was no longer the girl who broke a plate and lost everything. Now, she carried a name that opened doors. And created enemies. And this was only the beginning. The next morning did not feel like a normal morning. The air inside the house carried a different kind of weight, one that moved quietly but touched everything. Amara woke up earlier than usual, not because she was told to, but because her mind had already been awake long before her body followed. She sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, her hands resting together, her thoughts steady but alert. Today was not like the day before. Today was the first time she would step into a place where people would not just see her, but judge her, measure her, and decide what she meant in a world she had only just entered. She stood up and walked toward the window, pulling the curtain slightly to the side. The compound outside was calm, controlled as always, but she could already feel the difference. It was not in what she saw. It was in what she knew was coming. A knock came at the door. "Come in." Kemi entered, already dressed, already prepared, her expression calm but focused. "It is time." Amara nodded. Yes. The preparation that followed was more intense than anything she had experienced the day before. Every detail mattered now. The dress chosen for her was not just beautiful, it was deliberate. It was designed to speak without words, to show presence without trying too hard, to make people look without giving them a reason to criticize easily. As Kemi adjusted the final details, Amara stood still, her reflection in the mirror steady, controlled, ready. "You will do well," Kemi said quietly. Amara did not respond immediately. She looked at herself for a moment longer, then nodded slightly. "I will." When she stepped out of the room, everything was already in motion. Mrs. Odeola stood waiting in the hallway, her eyes moving over Amara carefully, checking every detail without needing to say much. "Good." That was all she said, but it was enough. They walked downstairs together. Ethan was already there. He turned as they approached, his eyes moving over Amara with the same calm attention he always carried. He did not rush his observation. He noticed everything. Then he gave a small nod. "We leave in 5 minutes." Amara nodded. Yes. The car ride was quieter than before. Not empty, but focused. Amara sat beside Ethan, her posture straight, her eyes forward, her mind clear. She was not trying to imagine what would happen anymore. She was ready to face it. The car moved through the city, passing familiar roads that no longer felt familiar. The distance between her old life and this moment felt greater with every passing second. Eventually, they arrived. The building was large, bright, and alive with movement. Cars lined the entrance, people dressed in expensive clothing moved in and out, their voices controlled, their laughter measured. The car stopped. The door opened. Ethan stepped out first. Amara followed. Immediately, the attention began. Not loud. Not obvious. But present. Eyes turned. Conversations paused for a second longer than normal. Amara felt it, but she did not react. She moved beside Ethan, her step steady, her face calm, her presence controlled. They entered the hall. Inside, everything was brighter, louder, more alive. Music played softly in the background. People stood in small groups, talking, observing, evaluating. This was not just an event. This was a place where alliances were seen, where positions were understood, where appearances mattered. Ethan did not stop walking. Amara stayed beside him. As they moved deeper into the room, the attention followed them more openly now. People recognized Ethan. That much was clear. But their attention shifted quickly to Amara. Who is she? The question moved through the room without needing to be spoken loudly. They stopped near a group of men who immediately greeted Ethan. "Good evening." Ethan nodded. "Good evening." Their eyes moved to Amara. Ethan did not delay. "My wife?" The words landed again. Just as they had in the office. But this time, the effect was larger. The men reacted differently. Surprise. Curiosity. Calculation. One of them smiled politely. We were not aware you were married. Ethan's expression did not change. You are now? The conversation moved on, but the message had already spread. Amara stood quietly, listening, observing, remembering. More people approached. More introductions. More reactions. Some smiled warmly, others politely, some with interest, some with quiet doubt. Amara handled each moment the same way. Calm. Controlled. Present. She did not speak too much. She did not hesitate. She did not shrink. Time moved. The room grew more aware of her presence. And then, it shifted. Amara felt it before she saw it. A change in the air. A slight pause in movement. A subtle redirection of attention. She turned slightly. Addis was standing across the room. Dressed elegantly. Confident. Watching. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, nothing else existed. Then Addis began to walk toward them. Each step slow. Intentional. The people around her moved slightly, giving space without realizing it. Ethan noticed. His posture did not change. Amara remained still. Addis stopped in front of them. Her eyes moved from Ethan to Amara, studying her again, more openly this time. So this is her. Her voice was calm, but it carried something sharper beneath it. Ethan did not respond immediately. Addis smiled slightly, but it did not reach her eyes. You move quickly. Ethan's voice was steady. I do what is necessary. Addis' gaze returned to Amara. And this was necessary. Amara met her eyes without hesitation. Yes. The answer came before she could think too much about it. Addis' smile shifted slightly. Interesting. She stepped closer, her presence controlled but strong. Do you understand where you are? Amara did not look away. Yes. Addis tilted her head slightly. Do you? There was a challenge in the question. Amara's voice remained steady. I do not need to understand everything to stand where I am. A small silence followed. Not long. But enough. Addis' eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in assessment. Then she straightened. We will see. She turned. And walked away. The moment passed. But the impact remained. Ethan looked at Amara. You did not hesitate. Amara nodded. You told me not to. Ethan held her gaze for a moment longer. Good. But Amara knew. That was not the end of it. That was the beginning. The night continued. But something had already been decided. Not by words. Not by announcements. But by presence. Amara was no longer just introduced. She was now recognized. And in a world like this, recognition meant one thing. The game had begun. The music continued, the conversations flowed, and the room returned to its rhythm, but something had already changed beneath the surface. What had looked like a normal event was no longer simple in Amara's eyes. Every glance now carried meaning. Every smile felt measured. Every word spoken seemed to sit on top of something deeper. She stood beside Ethan, her posture steady, her expression calm, but her awareness sharper than it had ever been before. She was no longer trying to fit into the room. She was studying it. People continued to approach them, one after another, each bringing a different tone. Some were openly friendly, offering congratulations with warmth that felt almost too smooth. Others were polite but distant, their words careful, their eyes observant. A few did not approach at all, choosing instead to watch from a distance, whispering quietly among themselves as they tried to understand what had just entered their world. Amara responded the same way to all of them. She did not try to impress. She did not try to explain herself. She kept her words simple, her tone steady, her presence controlled. It was not natural to her yet, but it was becoming easier with each passing moment. Ethan remained calm beside her, engaging when necessary, stepping back when needed, never once showing uncertainty. He did not guide her openly, but his presence alone created a structure she could follow. When he moved, she moved. When he paused, she paused. When he spoke, she listened. It was a silent coordination, one that did not require explanation. At one point, a group of older men approached, their presence heavier than the others. They were not just guests. They were decision makers, people who had influence beyond this room. Their greetings to Ethan carried respect, but also something else. Expectation. So it is true, one of them said, his voice calm but firm. Ethan nodded. It is. The man's eyes moved to Amara, studying her more closely than anyone else had so far. You have made a bold move. Ethan did not react. I made a necessary one. The man held his gaze for a moment, then nodded slightly, as if accepting the answer for now. We will see how it holds. The conversation shifted, but the message was clear. Nothing about this was final. Everything was being watched, evaluated, tested. Amara felt it settle deeper inside her. She was not just being introduced to people. She was being placed into a structure that had rules she had not yet fully learned. As the night moved on, the room grew louder, but the tension beneath it remained. It was not something most people would notice, but Amara did. She could feel it in the pauses between conversations, in the way certain people avoided certain others, in the way eyes followed movements across the room. Then, without warning, something shifted again. A voice called Ethan's name from across the room. Ethan turned slightly. Amara followed his gaze. A man stood there, tall, confident, his expression controlled but carrying a familiarity that was different from the others. He walked toward them with steady steps, his eyes fixed on Ethan, but briefly flicking toward Amara with clear interest. Ethan did not move. The man stopped in front of them. You did not tell me. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Not anger. Not exactly. But not approval either. Ethan's response was simple. It was not necessary. The man gave a small, dry smile. You always decide what is necessary. His eyes moved fully to Amara now. And this. He paused slightly. Was necessary. Amara met his gaze, holding it just long enough to show she would not look away first. Ethan spoke. This is Amara. The man nodded slowly. I can see that. He extended his hand. Victor. Amara hesitated for only a second before placing her hand in his. Amara. Victor's grip was firm, his eyes still studying her, as if trying to read something beyond what she showed. You entered quickly. Amara did not pull her hand away too fast. So did everything else. Victor's smile deepened slightly, but it did not soften. Interesting. He released her hand and looked back at Ethan. You should be careful. Ethan's expression did not change. I always am. Victor held his gaze for a moment longer, then stepped back. We will talk later. He turned and walked away. The moment passed, but its effect did not. Amara felt the tension rise again, stronger this time. She looked at Ethan. Who is he? Ethan answered without hesitation. Someone who does not like losing control. Amara understood enough. And me. Ethan's eyes met hers. You are part of what he cannot control. The meaning was clear. Amara turned her gaze back to the room. This was no longer just about being accepted. It was about disrupting something that had already been in place long before she arrived. The night began to slow as people started to leave, but the weight of everything that had happened did not fade. If anything, it became clearer. When they finally walked out of the building and returned to the car, the silence inside felt different from before. Not empty. Not uncertain. Focused. Amara leaned back slightly, her eyes moving briefly to the window before settling forward again. She had entered the room as someone unknown. She left it as someone remembered. Ethan spoke after a moment. You did well. Amara nodded. I listened. Ethan glanced at her. And you understood. Amara did not respond immediately. But she knew. This was not just a role anymore. This was something she had stepped into. Something that would not let her go easily. Back at the house, the night settled into silence again, but Amara's mind did not rest. As she stood in her room, looking at her reflection one more time, she could see the change more clearly than ever before. She was no longer reacting to the world around her. She was becoming part of it. And in that world, smiles were not always kindness. Sometimes. They were the beginning of a war. The days after the event did not return to normal. They became sharper. Faster. More dangerous. What happened that night spread quickly through the circles that mattered. Not through loud announcements, but through quiet conversations, private calls, and closed-door meetings. Amara's name, once unknown, was now being spoken in places she had never imagined. Not with admiration. Not with acceptance. But with concern. And in that word, concern meant one thing. She had become a problem. Inside the house, everything remained controlled, but the pressure had grown. Meetings became more frequent. Calls lasted longer. Ethan's schedule tightened, and the calm he carried began to reveal something beneath it. Not fear. Calculation. Amara noticed everything. She had learned quickly. Too quickly for someone they thought would break. One evening, as the sun lowered and the house settled into its usual silence, Mrs. Odeola entered Amara's room without knocking. "You need to come." Her voice was calm, but urgent. Amara stood immediately. "What is it?" Mrs. Odeola did not answer. "Just come." Amara followed. Downstairs, the atmosphere was different. Not quiet. Heavy. Ethan stood near the center of the room, his expression sharper than she had ever seen before. Two men stood across from him, both older, both serious. Amara stopped a few steps behind. Ethan looked at her. "Stay." She did. One of the men spoke. "This has gone too far." Ethan did not react. "It has gone exactly where I intended." The other man stepped forward. "You disrupted the structure. You ignored agreements." Ethan's voice remained calm. Because those agreements were no longer useful. The tension in the room tightened. "And her?" The man's eyes shifted to Amara. "She is the problem." Amara did not move. Ethan's response was immediate. "No." He stepped forward slightly. "She is the solution." Silence. The words landed harder than anything else that had been said. The men exchanged a look. Then one of them spoke again. "You are risking everything." Ethan's gaze did not waver. "No. I am changing everything." The room went still. Amara felt something shift deeply inside her. For the first time, she understood. This was never just about a contract. This was never just about marriage. She was not chosen because she was easy. She was chosen because she had nothing to lose. And in a world built on control, the most dangerous person was someone who could not be controlled. The men said nothing more. They turned. And left. The door closed behind them. The silence that followed was different. Not tense. Decided. Ethan turned to Amara. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara stepped forward. This was never temporary. Ethan looked at her. "No." Amara held his gaze. "Then why did you say it was?" Ethan paused. "Because you would not have stayed if I told you the truth." The honesty hit harder than anything else. Amara nodded slowly. She understood. Not everything. But enough. She took another step forward. "And now?" Ethan's voice softened slightly. "Now you decide if you stay." Amara felt the weight of that choice. But this time, it was different. Before, she had chosen out of survival. Now, she was choosing out of understanding. She looked around the house. The place that had once felt unfamiliar. Then back at Ethan. The man who had pulled her into a world she never knew existed. And then she spoke. "I stay." The words were steady. Clear. Final. Ethan nodded once. "Then we move forward." Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And everything changed. The resistance did not disappear. Addis tried again. Victor pushed harder. Others whispered, planned, waited for her to fail. But Amara did not fail. She adapted. She learned. She grew. She did not try to fight like them. She became something they did not understand. Calm. Patient. Unshaken. And slowly, the same people who questioned her began to respect her. The same people who watched her began to follow her. And one day, the same woman who had once stood in a kitchen, holding broken pieces of a plate, trembling under insult and shame, walked into a room. And everyone stood. Not because of Ethan, but because of her. Amara Okeke. No longer invisible. No longer weak. No longer someone to be thrown away. She did not raise her voice. She did not demand respect. She became it. And in the quietest way possible. She won. Thank you for listening to this story. If you felt the journey of Amara, if you connected with her struggle, her strength, and her transformation, then don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which part touched you the most. And let me know if you want more stories like this. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story. Because sometimes, the ones the world looks down on are the ones who rise the highest.